So how do we develop emotional maturity? I don't know, have you ever been walking around and you see people doing certain things and you sit there and go, man, why does that person do that? Or why did that person react that way to that situation? I wouldn't have done that. And so we constantly are seeing the differences in people and how they're acting and how they're behaving out in the world. And sometimes we just sit there and go, man, they just must be crazy about whatever it is they're doing. Well, they're not necessarily crazy, they're just different. And so part of becoming emotionally intelligent and developing this idea of emotional maturity is we got to be able to understand really what makes people tick. So today we're just going to dive into one of the temperaments that we've identified to be critical to understand it. They're real, these people are alive, they're out there in the world. And the question is that if they're different than us, a lot of times we see what they're doing and we just go, man, those people are just weird. Hopefully when we're done today, you won't take that statement anymore and you'll say, that person's not weird. Now I just understand they're just different than me. And as we do this, we're going to do a series of 4 of these videos. In each series, we're going to concentrate on one of these temperaments for you to be able to understand. So let's get started on number 1. The first one we're going to talk about is the blue temperament. So in our color combination, we've got 4. And the blue temperament is the temperament of love, so to speak. What drives and motivates the blue temperament more than anything else is about relationships. They surround themselves with relationships. They work to make relationships the center of their lives. They're wonderful people. They're kind. They're compassionate. I've talked with and been engaged with thousands of people that identify with the blue temperament all over the world. And it doesn't matter if I'm in Japan, if in the US, if I'm in Germany, blues are blues and they act and behave the same way, no matter where they live in the world. So one of the things to really be aware of from a blue perspective is if you're interacting with somebody that has a blue temperament, you need to give them some time. You need to give them your attention. You can't just be efficient in that relationship. That will end up harming the relationship. You'll end up becoming separated because they will not value you if you don't value them. And how you value them is by giving them time, letting them part of your life and who you are as a human being. Now, depending on your other temperaments, right? Other temperaments look at the blues and they sit there and go, how in the world, why does that person do that? One of the things the blues find in the workplace that they do all the time is they can't say no. They're constantly, they want to help people. They want to participate in what's going on. And so they're always volunteering. They're always participating and helping people. That's the good news. Bad news is that they end up not being able to say no to people. So how does that play out? We talk about blues being wonderful. Now there's an aspect of blues, we call it low maturity, where now they end up showing up and they end up actually damaging relationships with their low mature behavior. Well, how does that play out? How does low mature behavior from a blue perspective, what does it look like? Well, one is their inability to say no. In fact, they say yes to so many people that they get overwhelmed and then they end up not being able to accomplish their tasks. They're not able to serve the people that they're working for, which then ends up damaging relationships, which ultimately then impact their ability as a human to feel good about themselves. That's why it's a low mature behavior. Anytime we exhibit a behavior that has an impact on ourselves or others in a negative way, we call that a low mature behavior. Another low mature behavior for a blue, to be able to truly understand who they are, is when they find themselves in a leadership role, they really don't know how to take that leadership role. So sometimes they'll act as a leader where they'll just be the most compassionate leader. Had a lady that I worked for, I mean, everybody loved her. They absolutely loved her. If you would have said, man, is she a great leader? They say, well, we love her. I thought that was interesting. Not that they say, yes, she's a great leader. Yes, she gets great results. They said they loved her. And that was the end of the story. Whereas other leaders, from a blue perspective, they end up being hated by people that they're leading. Why? Because they believe that they have a weakness in caring so much about people that they shut that off. So being able to just not understand blues and where blues are primarily coming from, if we can understand them at a deeper level from a behavior perspective, then we can really begin to understand them and we can begin to work with them and help them. So as we talk about this ability to increase our emotional intelligence as it pertains to really working with and helping other people, we need to start by beginning to understand how are they seeing the world, how are they showing up in the world, and what can I do to ensure that I value them for who they are and the uniquenesses. And when I see and experience low mature behaviors, how can I sit down and help them to understand that and help them be more successful? So to give you an example of this, of what I could do to help somebody that had a blue preference, I had a young lady that worked for me. She couldn't say no, and she never could get her assignments done because she was so overwhelmed and so busy helping other people. So finally we sat down, we talked about it and said, here's what I really appreciate about you. And here's all the wonderful things, but here's a weakness that I've noticed. And your inability to be able to turn people away and say no is really hindering your ability to be successful. So what we need to do is you need to block off a period of time each day that's going to be your time. This 2-hour block is going to be your time. And no one's able to come and enter into that time. You have to learn how to say no. He says, I don't know that I can do that. I said, oh, I'll help you. So when we started this on first Monday morning, we started it at 9 o'clock. That was from 9 to 11 was her time. I pulled up a chair outside her office and I sat there in a chair with a book and I was planning on spending the next 2 hours there. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, until you can learn to say no, I'm going to say no for you. So people would walk up to her office because as they're used to doing, and they come up to her office. And I'm like, she'll be available at 11 o'clock. And they're like, oh, okay. Do you know how many people went off and solved their own problems when they couldn't just go jump into her office? And after a few days of that, and what she was able to see, what she was able to accomplish in those 2 hours alone, she said, I'll never have a problem with this anymore. You don't need to sit outside my door. I now understand that to really be successful, that's an aspect of my personality that I need to improve on. And she was able to then control and protect that time and become very successful in her role as she grew and developed her emotional maturity. So now to develop your emotional maturity and to understand more about this, we'd like you to click down below and take our free assessment and understand what your temperament is. And then you can begin to understand what the temperament of those around you are and begin to be more effective in developing your emotional maturity and helping them build theirs. And as you do that, then you can join us on our mission to helping put the human back into humanity.